Welcome to the Liberty Beacon Rant. And as you all know, last week we started a show, and I'm famous for not getting through a complete topic in one evening because I tend to expound a lot on a lot of what I discussed because they're not what I would call simple topics. But the name of the show is, or the name of this series is, From Independence to Dependence. And of course, everybody should be pretty much aware of what I mean by that at this point. We fought for our independence in 1776, and here we are today, a society so dependent on its government that any decent comedian could make a livelihood out of this topic. But what we were discussing last week was a government of, by, and for the corporatist elite, and you are not invited. The articles are both in the chat room, and the one we had started on last week was Government, a Mind-Boggling Program of Lies and Deceit. And that is an article that when I wrote it, it took a lot out of me because topics like this tend to anger me. And of course, my throat always is raw about the time I start to do this show, and it's going to be a lot more raw by the end of the show. I'll go over this rather quickly, and then we'll jump back in on item number 14, which I believe is where we left off. But the utilization of deception and misdirection or white lies is not new. But their facilitation is at a level so far beyond utilization that the truth must hold an elevated status on the endangered list of concepts at risk of extinction. In 1981, William Casey, who was the CIA director at the time, made a comment, and the comment was, "We will know our disinformation program is complete when everything Americans believe is false." Remember, that was 30 years ago. And if you think that program has, I don't know, gone bye-bye, then pass around what you're smoking because these programs have only increased in scope and magnitude as the years have gone along. Anybody my age, and I'll be 60 August 19th, has seen the changes in this country over the last 3 generations. We can speak to them, and we can speak to them with bravado because we have lived through these changes. One of the biggest changes I've seen lately is I grew up in an era wherever we were involved in a conflict anywhere in the world, we had peace rallies around this country. Millions of people protested against the government for being involved in the slaughter of innocent people in any way, shape, or form. Today we are involved in more hostilities than at any point in our history, probably even including, maybe not at the magnitude, but at as far as the numbers of countries we are perpetrating or fomenting hostilities in is probably equal to or exceeds what we were involved in World War II. And that was considered a global war. There is information that states that out of about 200 countries on this planet, the United States has military forces assigned to or actively engaged in 150 plus of them. And that's what we are aware of. Now stop and think about that. Where are the peace rallies? Where are the liberals who scream bloody murder? What has happened to the society in this country? Things have changed on such a radical level that in the last 60 years I was born into a country I was comfortable to be a part of, and today I am the founder of the Liberty Beacon Project with 12 websites, a lot of them spread out across the planet in countries including Great Britain, Australia, South Africa, Canada, and more. And at least a dozen, if not more, podcast shows, contributors in over 30 countries, and I spend 18 hours a day searching for good information and articles to post on these websites, and writing articles. That's fact. And anybody who knows me can verify that. 18 to 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, almost 2 years without a vacation. This is the change I have seen in this country. I grew up, or I matured. My career is working for the military-industrial complex. That's a fact. I'm an ex-nuclear submarine sailor, and from there I went to the military-industrial complex. I worked for Raytheon Services Company, and I worked strictly DoD contracts. I was a part of what I rail against today. I woke up less than 3 years ago, and I have spent the amount of time each day studying, researching, everything I could put my greedy little hands on. And what I have come to realize is that I don't live in the country I was born in. I don't. As a matter of fact, there is a stark reality that has to be realized by all of us who are more than 45, 50 years old. We not only realize it, we either totally have shut ourselves off from it and pushed away from it and ignore it, or we are the spearhead of what is called the liberty movement. So let's go a little further, okay? What I said was, what I wrote here is, and I'm just going to go over parts of this because I do want to finish this article and start on the next one today. Today, thanks to the age of information and the internet, this facade, meaning the perpetration of lies upon we the people, is quickly breaking down. Toto is tugged back on the curtain of diversion and misinformation, hiding the evil wizard of deception. What we know for certain is not pleasing for those of us who wish and who pay attention. And it's basically too late at this point because our eyes are already open. And what we see angers us because the scope of the lies is unfathomable. And even the limited number that we are aware of or have glimpsed are truly overwhelming. I did give a list of what I consider to be the most blatant lies being perpetrated on the American people today, and I'll read through that very quickly, and I won't expound on any of them because, again, that would take me the rest of the show, which is exactly what happened last week. The government is here to protect you and your rights. Yeah. Psychotropic drugs are not habitual and are good for you. All Muslims are out to kill us for our freedoms. The economy is getting better. The dollar is sound. Common Core standards are a leap forward in education. GMOs are nutritious and healthy and won't harm the environment. Chemtrails don't exist. Okay, I can look up in my sky right now, and see them. Okay? Vaccines are the savior of humanity and do no harm. Guns are evil. They kill people and should be confiscated for your safety. Government snooping is necessary to keep us all safe. If you are doing nothing wrong, you have nothing to worry about. Drones will never be used against Americans or on American soil. The Affordable Health Care Act is affordable. We are winning the war on drugs. Corporatism does not influence the government. The military-industrial complex does not drive U.S. hostilities. And my favorite, our president is a constitutional scholar. Now, if you just go over that list yourself. Go over that list yourself. And I dare anybody to send me any information disproving that any one of those that I have just read is in fact the truth. The government's point is the truth. It's not a lie. It's not being misrepresented, because I can send you a ton of information. I can virtually bury you on proof that each and every one of these is a misrepresentation and a lie. And of course, after this list, I put etc. ... Because this is the short list. Anybody who feels that this is the entire list of lies being presented to we the people isn't awake as you think you are. Okay. But from there I went on to give you a list as it applies to trolls and shills. Because a lot of the liberty movement today is conducted on websites, or conducted on social media such as Facebook, or conducted on Twitter, this is where our message goes out. Why? Because a vast majority of the population in this country today is so tied up with their toys, which includes their computers, their cell phones, any means of electronic communication. Okay? So there are virtually and literally an army of trolls hired by government sponsored companies. Companies that belong within the industrial complex that get big contracts from the government to train trolls to go in and disrupt people like me and people like you, and to put a bend on our word, or to cause divisiveness, or to institute diversions. And I had gone all the way up through item 14. I strongly recommend anybody listening to this show, again, I'll give you the title of the article so that if you're listening to it on one of the affiliates we're simulcasting to and you don't have the chat room available to you, go to the Liberty Beacon and look up an article called Government, a Mind-Boggling Program of Lies and Deceit. And what I have is 25 steps that are the actual, I don't know, they are the armory. These are the weapons of the trolls and the shills. And the last one we went over was number 13, so we'll start on number 14. Okay, and these are trolls and shills as they apply to either a post or an article that you posted on your Facebook wall or within a group or on a page or on your website. And it's open for comments. And this is 1 through 13 were pretty damning, but let's continue on. 14, trolls or shills. Demand complete solutions. Avoid the issues by requiring opponents to solve the crime at hand completely. A ploy which works best when issues qualifying for, and it says for Rule 10, and we go back to Rule 10, and that's associate opponent charges with old news. So basically what they're saying here is you go in and you post an article and you state this is an issue. And they come on and they say, well, what about? Or how come? Or they want you to give the complete history and the complete solution. So what that does is that ties you up from paying any further attention to any other comments, or it misdirects or redirects anybody who is doing any decent commenting within that thread. Okay? So it's demand complete solutions. Number 15. Fit the facts to alternate conclusions. This requires creative thinking unless the crime was planned with contingency conclusions in place. In other words, tell somebody, okay, yeah, well, that makes sense, but that also applies to this. And that also applies to this. So what's the truth here? Again, they're not saying that you're lying. They're not saying that you're wrong. What they're saying is that also fits here, here, and here. They're planting the germ of doubt into anybody else who's on that thread. And again, it's not necessary to have a full-blown frontal attack or a total victory. Planting the seed of doubt is sometimes all it takes to cause a large enough diversion to negate the message you're trying to get out. Vanish evidence and witnesses. If it does not exist, it is not a fact, and you won't have to address the issue. That's pretty self-explanatory, so let's move on to number 17. Change the subject. We see this all the time. Usually in connection with one of these ploys listed here, find a way to sidetrack the discussion with abrasive or controversial comments in hopes of turning attention to a new, more manageable topic, one that they are more familiar with, one that can more easily control. This works especially well with companions who can argue with you over the new topic and polarize the discussion arena in order to avoid discussing more key issues. Again, misdirection, redirection, plant the seed of doubt. Okay? Emotionalize, antagonize, and goad opponents. Ha! This is where your trolls come in. Because a lot of times they'll come in and they start spitting stuff out, and as soon as you hit them with facts, they don't come back with a retort that explains your fact away. They start to call you names. If you can't do anything else, chide and taunt your opponents and draw them into emotional responses, which will tend to make them look foolish and overly motivated, and generally render the material somewhat less coherent. Not only will you avoid discussing the issues in the first instance, but even if their emotional response addresses the issue, you can further avoid the issue by then focusing on how sensitive they are to criticism. How many times have you heard that in a post you have made? Well, gee, you jump bad really quick. Is there something wrong with your information? You know, why are you so touchy? Why are you so sensitive? Can't anybody have an opposing opinion? And again, it is merely meant to draw the focus away from the issue and refocus on you, making you look foolish. Now again, some of you might be, if you just joined in or if you didn't listen last week, wondering how this is applicable to what we're discussing, the government putting out lies. Because these are their agents. This is what they're trained to do. Some of these people make north of $75,000 a year to sit in computer sweatshops where they have computer after computer lined up, desk after desk after desk, or just those big conference unfolding tables, collapsible tables with collapsing chairs, and one computer right after the other, and all they do all day long is disrupt, refocus, and bully. These are their agents. A vast majority, as I have told you, of the liberty movement takes place on electronic media today. It is our forum. These are their agents. All right, let's go to 19. Ignore facts presented and demand impossible proofs. Y'all should be familiar with this one. This is perhaps a variant of the play dumb rule. Regardless, of what material may be presented by the opponent in public forums, claim the material irrelevant and demand proof that it is, that is impossible for the opponent to come by, or may exist but not at his disposal, or it may be something which is known to be safely destroyed or withheld, such as a murder weapon. In other words, I'm going to ask you, if I want to redirect, to supply proof. And if you can't supply the proof, then your argument holds no water. Now, what am I going to do as the author of that article or that post? Am I going to jump off and start searching the internet trying to find proof, or going back through my notes? This, again, is consuming my time. It's redirecting me. And even if I do come up with information, it's the old, oh, yeah? All right, so you say that. Now, prove that. And again, this goes on infinitum. But we all see it, and we all see it on a regular basis. In order to completely avoid discussing the issues, it may be required that you categorically deny and be critical of media or books as valid sources. I've seen that a lot. Deny that witnesses are acceptable, or even deny that statements made by government or other authorities have any meaning or relevance. If you do this strongly enough, it causes disruption. It causes a disfocusing of your intended message. The next one, Number 20, false evidence. Whenever possible, introduce new facts or clues designed and manufactured to conflict with the opponent's presentations. Use useful tools to neutralize sensitive issues or impede resolution. This works best when the crime was designed with contingencies for the purpose, and the facts cannot easily be separated from the fabrications. If I give you information, which obviously I'm going to give you resources or sources, or I'm going to give you links, okay? And if I write a commentary, okay, that doesn't require a lot of resources and links because that's basically my opinion. Now, it's based on research that I've done. But if someone else comes in and throws an opinion and says, well, this is in fact what happened, what they're forcing you to do is to peel away from my discussion, my presentation, and go and prove or disprove what they are saying. Again, what's being perpetrated here is misdirection, redirection, or a disfocusing of the intended message. 21. Call a grand jury, special prosecutor, or other empowered investigative body. Subvert the process to your benefit and effectively neutralize all sensitive issues without open discussion. Once convened, the evidence and testimony are required to be secret when properly handled. For instance, if you own the prosecuting attorney, it can issue a grand jury or ensure a grand jury hears no useful evidence and that the evidence is sealed and unavailable to subsequent investigators. Once a favorable verdict is achieved, the matter can be consequently officially closed. Usually this technique is applied to find the guilty innocent, but it can also be used to obtain changes when seeking to frame a victim. Again, we're not necessarily talking about a real grand jury. We're talking about maybe 4 or 5 people who are working with you, because on a lot of occasions when trolls attack, they don't do it as individuals. When someone attacks you, and all of a sudden you see people you hardly ever see in your conversation come in and start supporting that this other individual, this troll of this show's point of view, then this is teamwork. And what you've done is you've formed a committee. And if you get 2 or 3 or 4 of them ganging up on you, now they have what they can present as a consensus. And if that is seen as a consensus within that thread, again, your message loses credibility. Manufacture a new truth. Create your own experts, groups, authors, leaders, or influence existing ones willing to forge new ground via scientific, investigative, or social research or testimony which concludes favorably. Okay? In this way, if you must actually address issues, you can do so authoritatively. Of course, it's all false, but is anybody going to take the time to disprove your experts? Again, a means of misdirection, a means of taking the air out of your sail. Create bigger distractions. If the above does not seem to be working to distract from sensitive issues or to prevent unwanted media coverage of unstoppable events such as traits, create bigger news stories or treat them as such to distract the multitudes. A lot of times we see issues splashed across the internet, across Facebook, across websites. Issues that once you've done some digging, and I must tell you that when I first started in this and started my first couple of websites, there were a lot of stories that I grabbed onto that I was like, oh my God, and I would put them on the website and I would put the word out. And after having a few people come to me and say, have you done any research on that? And doing a little digging in, then the red-faced Roger comes back and has to apply the apologies. Because although on the surface the information looks good and looks well-resourced, any delving into it at all you find out that it's a trivial matter, or that a matter that has no real connection to the message you wish to be putting out. Yes, guilty is charged. So I'm not telling you that these influences haven't worked on me. What I am telling you is that I am a person who has developed wisdom over the multitude of attacks I have faced from the conception of the Liberty Beacon Project and through its growth. And the intelligence is one thing. You're born with that. That's something that you were born with, you'll have all of your life, unless you sniff too much glue or snort too much heroin or whatever, but we won't go there. What I've acquired is wisdom. Wisdom is having made 1,000 or 1,000,000 mistakes and learning a lesson from each and every one of them. So today I can sit here and talk to you from experience and read these 25 steps. This is the training manual for these trolls. Each and every one of these is a specific category. And yes, each one of these 25 bullet points is expounded on. And best practices are taught. But this is their training manual. This is their operations manual. This is what they work from. And anybody listening to this show right now has seen so much of this perpetrated against you, yourself, or your friends, or people you know who have websites, or Facebook groups, or pages, or any forum. You've seen this. You know about this. But to think that this is an accident or an occasional shill or troll coming in, or somebody who just doesn't particularly care for the person or the admins that run a given forum, that's bullcrap. These are trained professionals. They do this for a living, and they make a pretty darn good living doing it. Better than most of us. All right, number 24, silence critics. Silence critics. I don't have my glasses on. I'm admitting to that. And right now I'm not exactly sure where they are. So the word silence and the word science are so close together. And when you have the type of minor vision impairment I do, it's easy to mistake one word for the other, especially when you're reading basically from memory. So number 24 is silence critics. If the above methods do not prevail, consider removing opponents from circulation by some definitive solution so that the need to address issues is removed entirely. This can be by their death, arrest, detention, blackmail, or destruction of their character. This is the one that applies to us the most. By release of blackmail information, or merely by destroying them financially, emotionally, or severely damaging their health. Now, a lot of this goes a lot further for the people who disseminate information, say through the mainstream media, or people who say they speak for the government, so on and so forth. But the part about destroying credibility, that definitely applies to the socialized media. That definitely applies to the website comments. Again, it is all about making you look less credible. It's all about destroying your credibility. Because if I accomplish that goal, if I destroy your credibility within a thread on a given post, anybody who reads a lot of what I write, this is going to affect their concept of my ability to put the truth forward across the board, not in just this one article. So number 24 is pretty, that's one that we see a lot of. Destroying the credibility of the author or the poster. Okay? 25 is vanish. Okay? If you are a key holder of secrets or otherwise overly illuminated and you think the heat is getting too hot, to avoid the issues, vacate the kitchen. And a lot of times what you see is, and I, not only myself, but a lot of the contributors And a lot of the staff members of the Liberty Beacon Project have gotten very, very good at this. And we also run in packs. If you come on as a troll or a shill and you try to dispute or discredit what we have posted, then while I am telling you that vulgarity is not permitted within this forum, or I am telling you, well, you're asking me for proof, where's your proof on your point of view, there is someone else within this project who is bringing up those links and starting to slap them in place. What happens to a troll or a shill when you start to answer his questions in a satisfactory fashion? They disappear. They go away. And in a lot of cases, you never see them again. All right. Now, those are the 25 rules for applying disinformation, or for applying distraction, diversion, or for basically disqualifying the author or the poster, disqualifying their credibility. Now, let's go on to what the big boys do. These are the 8 traits of the disinformationalist. And these are the big boys, okay? 1, avoidance. They never actually discuss issues head on or provide constructive input, generally avoiding a citation of references or credentials. Rather, they merely imply this, that, and the other. Virtually everything about their presentation implies their authority and expert knowledge in the matter without any further justification or credibility. Does that sound like our government talking to us? It sure sounds like it to me. It sounds like all the talking heads that get paid a couple $100,000 a year to tell you and me a batch of lies every single day. Selectivity. They tend to pick and choose opponents carefully, either applying the hit-and-run approach against mere commentators, supportive of opponents, or focusing heavier attacks on key opponents who are known to directly address issues. Should a commentator become argumentative with any success, the focus will shift to include the commentator as well. That's pretty self-explanatory too. So I want to move on to the next one because I really want to get to this next article today. Okay, coincidental. They tend to surface suddenly. I'm talking about trolls and shills here again. And somewhat coincidentally, with a new controversial topic with no clear prior record of participation in general discussions in the particular public arena involved. Somebody brand new comes into your group, and all of a sudden they're splashing big things across either posts that they make or as comments and threads that you might have initiated. They likewise tend to vanish once the topic is no longer of general concern. They were likely directed or elected to be there for this reason and vanish with the same reason. In other words, if I want to institute something into your thought patterns, and I feel it's something, whether it's true or not, that will be acceptable within the type of forum that you run, or as a comment on the type of post you authored or article you authored, then I'll come in and I'll make this total revelation. And I'll make it seem like I know everything I'm talking about, and everybody's going, oh my God, really? What have they done? They have totally redirected the message. And when that redirection has occurred, their job is done. And before anybody can delve into who are you and what are your credentials, and this goes back to the last comment, okay, they disappear, never to be heard from again. But have they accomplished what they came in to do? Absolutely. Here we go with my favorite. Teamwork. They tend to cooperate in self-congratulatory and complimentary packs or teams. Of course, this can happen naturally in any public forum, but there will likely be an ongoing pattern of frequent exchanges of this sort where professionals are involved. Sometimes one of the players will infiltrate the opponent's camp to become a source for straw man or other tactics designed to dilute opponent's presentational strength. Again, this falls right back to the last one. I'm coming in to say things that are going to, while not put people on guard, maybe move them a little bit further over to the doubt side of the spectrum and institute or add information into the conversation that helps to redirect the conversation or to dilute the message. Anti-conspiratorial. They they almost always have disdain for conspiracy theorists. Yeah, I see that a lot. And usually for those who in any way believe JFK was not killed by Lee Harvey Oswald. Ask yourself why. If they hold such disdain for conspiracy theorists, do they focus on defending a single topic discussed in a news group? Focusing on conspiracies. In other words, if they're in there saying you're nothing but a conspiracy theorist, why are they in that group themselves? And let me put to rest the term conspiracy theorist. There are conspiracy theorists out there, but they are very few and far in between. Because the one thing that has been accomplished over the maturation of the Liberty Beacon or the Liberty Movement itself is that a lot of conspiracy theories are now conspiracy facts. Are they conspiracies? Hell yes! Are they theories? No. They've been proven well enough on many occasions to, exist well outside the realm of theory anymore. One might think they would either be trying to make fools of everyone or every topic, or simply ignore the group they hold in such disdain. Or one might more rightly conclude they have an ulterior motive for their actions in going out of their way to focus as they do. If you really think that everything we talk about in this group, on this website, on this page, on this Twitter channel, is nothing but conspiracy theories, why are you there? You're either there because you absolutely agree with us, but don't want anybody to know you do, or don't want anybody in the NSA to think you do, or you're there for a reason and drawing a paycheck for it. Artificial emotions, number 6. All right? An odd kind of artificial emotionalism and an unusually thick skin. An ability to preserve and persist even in the face of overwhelming criticism and unacceptance. This likely stems from intelligence community training that no matter how condemning the evidence, deny everything and never become emotionally involved or reactive. The net result for a disinfo artist is that emotions can seem artificial. Most people, if responding in anger, for instance, will express their animosity throughout the rebuttal. But disinfo types usually have trouble maintaining the image and are hot and cold with respect to pretended emotions. And they're usually more calm or unemotional communication style. In other words, when the conversation calls for heat, they turn it on. When it calls for zero emotion, they show none. But anybody, such as myself, who, say in doing a rant like this, I'm emotionally charged during the whole darn thing. Unless I'm reading something, and even when I'm reading something, I don't turn it on or off. But yet, if this is what you do for a job, if you are a professional at this, then you know the right times to be angry. And you know the right times not to be angry. And a watchful eye can establish that pattern. It's just a job. And they often seem unable to act their role in character, as well in communications mediums as they might be able to in real face-to-face communications. It's a lot tougher to perpetrate emotion when you're doing it for a living, unless, of course, you're a trained actor or actress. And if that's the case, you probably would make a lot more money than you would being one of these disinfo guys. So, again, look for that type of an established pattern. You might have outright rage and indignation one moment, ho-hum the next, and more anger later. An emotional yo-yo, that's what I call it, with respect to being thick-skinned. No amount of criticism will deter them from doing their job. And they will generally continue their old disinfo patterns without any adjustments to criticisms or how obvious it is that they play the game. Where a more rational individual who truly cares what others think might seek to improve their communication style, substance, and so forth, or simply give up. If I'm doing this for a job and I know that I'm going to elicit anger from you, then I don't have thick skin. I'm expecting that. This is what I'm trying to do. So if I've got a half a dozen people screaming at me in type, okay, or emotionally charged words being thrown at me, and I don't react to them, there's got to be a reason. There really does. And if that person maintains their presence within that forum for days or weeks or months and continues the same pattern, let that be a red flag to you. Because nobody has skin that thick. If the word I'm putting out to you is constantly denigrated over and over and over again, I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to tell myself that this is a useless waste of my time. And I'm going to go somewhere where I feel I may be effective. The people we're discussing have skin as thick as, I don't know, a brick wall. Again, a sure sign. Something that should be throwing up a red flag. Number 7, inconsistent. There is also a tendency to make mistakes which betray their true self-motives. This may stem from not really knowing the topic, or it may be somewhat Freudian, so to speak, in that perhaps they really root for the side of truth deep within. Oh, I don't know. We all constantly joke about, hey, the NSA is listening to this conversation. Well, good, let them. Maybe they'll learn something. Wouldn't it absolutely put a smile on your face if you found out that there are actually some NSA people who listen to these conversations day after day after day and eventually decide they're going to quit their jobs because they've become aware of things they never were? What did I tell you I used to do for a living? I used to work for the military-industrial complex. I used to work for the Department of Defense. 90% of what I push back against today, I used to be the biggest proponent for you could ever imagine. I sat down one day and listened to a friend. And I listened to him for 6 hours straight. And what did he do? He put doubt into my head. So if these people can sit there and listen to this day after day after day, even after proof is afforded them over and over again, and still spew the same crap, then you got to know that if they're not acting with emotion, And they're not willing to give up their train of thought even after it's been disproven that they are there for a reason other than to get you to change your mind. Number 8, time constant. All right. There are 3 ways this can be seen to work, especially when the government or other empowered player is involved in a cover-up operation. Any NG posting by a targeted proponent for truth can result in an immediate response. The government and other empowered players can afford to pay people to sit there and watch for an opportunity to do some damage. This is what I'm telling you. Since disinfo in an NG only works if the reader sees it, fast response is called for, or the visitor may be swayed towards the truth. So what this is telling you is they are trained with a very quick response time. You put a question in, bam! They come back with an answer. Whether it's the truth or not, all they have to do is catch your attention, distract you from the intended message. Okay? When dealing in more direct ways with a disinformationalist, such as email, delay is called for. There will usually be a minimum of a 48 to 72 hour delay. This allows a sit-down team discussion on response strategy for the best effect, and even enough time to get permission or instruction from a formal chain of command. If somebody sends you something via email, you know it's going to be anywhere from 24 to 72 hours before you hear back. Okay? Again, if that gives you time to get your act together and do a little research, it gives your opponent the same advantage. And if these people are doing this for a living and they're experts at it, then you're giving them a lot of time to arm themselves in a very effective fashion. Okay, the third one. In the NG example 1 above, it will often also be seen that bigger guns are drawn and fired after the same 48 to 72 hour delay. This is a fact. They're always going to come back with something even more impressive. The team approach in play. The team strengths in play. This is especially true when the targeted truth seeker or their comments are considered more important with respect to potential to reveal the truth. Thus, a serious truthsayer will be attacked twice for the same sin. Okay. Remarkably, even media and law enforcement have not been trained to deal with these issues. For the most part, only the players themselves understand the rules of the game. What they're telling you here is that these are courses, these are lesson plans, these are operational manuals, these are guidebooks that are set down for professional people that, I don't know, they make a living out of disinformation. This is what they do for a living. And even they will tell you that the media, law enforcement, these people even have not been trained on how to deal with these issues. And for the most part, only the players themselves understand the rules of the game. Okay. Marco Torres is a research specialist. This is the gentleman who put this list together. And what he has done is, over his lifetime, is he holds degrees in public health and environmental science and is a professional speaker on topics such as disease prevention, environmental toxins, and health policy. Let me repeat those 3 again, okay? Disease prevention, environmental toxins, and health policy. All right. Let me put that into English for you, all right? Chemtrails, GMOs, and vaccines. This is what he's a speaker on. All right? He holds a degree in public health and environmental sciences. Where do you think the trolls come out the most? Gee, that would be in vaccine, GMO, and chemtrail forums. And closely followed up by liberty-based forums. So this guy has a lot of expertise and a college degree behind him, and he's been a speaker for his entire life. And he, like myself, and I'm not at this point going to lay any claim to having the credentials this guy has. But if you remember back a little ways, what I told you was that this project has developed into a global organization that encompasses over, because we do have a couple in the pipeline right now, a dozen websites, over a dozen radio shows, and contributors in over 30 countries across the planet. We are very, very heavily involved in Facebook to the tune of close to 500 groups and well over 100 pages. And we are on Twitter and just about anything else you can think of. So if you don't think having or speaking to, and anybody who's listened to this show for the last, 65 or 66 episodes we've done, knows that we did a 26 episode series on the connections between GMOs, vaccines, geoengineering, and perpetual warfare. And if you don't think that we don't get hit constantly on our websites, in Facebook, on Twitter, and comments on our radio shows by these trolls and shills who are trained professionals to do exactly that, you're wrong. But I can tell you that the incidence of this has dropped drastically by about 90% or more. Why? Because we have established that, it's not the intelligence again, it's the wisdom. It has happened to us so many times that we have discerned the patterns. It has happened to us so many times that we have discerned the characters. There are specific trolls out there. I can tell you, I don't care what name they use to come into a forum, I can tell you who it is. I might never know what his real name is. I might call him Alpha or Bravo or number 10 or number 12. But I can tell you that is a specific individual. Why? Because the pattern is the same. We all suffer this. Anybody listening to this show right now is aware of disinformation. Anybody listening to this show right now has suffered disinformation by either trolls or shills. Now, I also won't tell you that on occasion you won't find someone who stumbles in thinking that your forum was about something and it's actually about the opposite. Or somebody who honestly believes that he can come in and dissuade you that your point of view is wrong, not being a shill and not being a troll. This does happen on occasion. We're talking about 0.1%. The average person with any intellect at all who firmly believes in the efficacy of vaccines is not going to join an anti-vaccine forum and get beat to crap every day. He's not going to do it. So if someone comes in that does, or seems to always be redirecting a message, or seems to always be causing trouble, red flags need to go up, people. They need to. One of the biggest reasons our message is not as effective as it can be in the liberty and the tyranny movement. When I say the tyranny movement, I'm talking about the tyranny being perpetrated against us, whether it's health or political or perpetual warfare. One of the biggest things we suffer is misdirection and disinformation. It eats up too much of our time. It makes us look stupid. And then we've got to take all of the time to go back and reestablish our credibility. You need to become proficient at spotting these traits. Grab this article. I'm not the most eloquent reader, even of the stuff I write. Go through it yourself. Look for these patterns in your groups, on your websites, within the comments. Look for these patterns. I guarantee you they are there. And do some house cleaning. Now, I need to ask you a question, and then we move on to the next article. And I doubt if I'm going to get through the whole thing today, the next article, but we'll get a majority of it done. I'll get through it, but we might have to hold discussions on it next week. The name of this article we just went through over the last 2 weeks is Government, a Mind-Boggling Program of Lies and Deceit. I need to ask you a question, and you need to think about this. Why would a government need to hire an army, and there are a lot of them out there, and they make very good money, to come in and destroy what you are saying, which you know to be the truth? You've done the research, you've got the resources, you've got the references, you know this to be true. But yet, there are so many disinformation agents being employed by this government to poke holes in everything you say. When a government no longer trusts its citizens with the truth, it is the people they fear. When the people no longer trust the government because it will not put forward the truth, then it is their government they fear. And when both of these exist simultaneously, revolution in one form or the other, whether it is peaceful or whether it is in a military or a, I don't know, violent form, is all but inevitable. The first time I said that was 3 years ago, a month after I woke up. And when I said it to somebody, he looked at me and he said, "You've been doing this for a long time, haven't you?" But to me, no. I really didn't know hardly anything then. But what I did understand was the concept that my government is not working for me anymore. They are working against me. That I am not an asset to my government anymore, except to the banksters and your birth certificate, which they could draw money against. I am not an asset to my government anymore. I am a hindrance. And for anybody who pushes back against that, why do you have all of these huge data centers all over the country that collect terabyte upon terabyte of data from each and every one of us? Yes, each and every one of us, every single day. And with that, I'm going to close this article out. But I strongly recommend that you go to the Liberty Beacon and you find the article called Government, semicolon, a mind-boggling program of lies and deceit. Because the 25 steps for disinformation and the 8 steps for the professionals are in there. And what you're going to find once you start looking, after you've read through these a couple of times and really, really let them sink in, what you're going to find when you start looking at the comments in any forum that you own or run or manage or enjoy is that it's there. And it's a very lucrative business for a lot of small companies within the military-industrial complex. All right, let's move on. And right about now, my throat feels like I just ran 50 grit sandpaper across it. But we still got 26 minutes to go. All right. The next article that we're going to be discussing today is something that I wrote because it's flooded all over the news today. And even the mainstream media is reporting on this. Now, the mainstream media is reporting on this, and we all know that they are government shows. We know this to be a fact. Okay? We all know they speak from scripts handed to them by government agents or people within the administration. If they're singing this tune, then you have to understand what's going on at the border. Part of what it is intended to accomplish is a massive distraction of the population. But a distraction from what? What are they trying to get us to look away from? And what we do with the Liberty Beacon Project is when we see something this big going on, being reported this studiously by the mainstream media, is we start looking in the shadows. And next week we're going to talk about what's going on in the shadows while this is going on. But this article, when I wrote it because it touched me personally. The article is called Coming to America. Yes, Coming to America. 3 words, but 3 very powerful words. So let's get through the article. And once we're through the article, I will go through and we'll hit some discussion points. And if we can't get to them this week, we will continue with them next week before we go into what's hiding in the shadows. Okay, Coming to America. I will start this commentary with the intention of reviving memories of an America that the world once admired as the land of promise, opportunity, freedom, and liberty. People from across this ever-shrinking globe once dreamed of immigrating to this great nation to build a new life and raise a family free of poverty and oppression and make their fortune. Most sold every last thing they had to purchase a ticket on some tramp clipper or tramp steamer and risked an ocean voyage of unseen or unimaginable danger just to see that dream realized. When they arrived here, poor, tired, and weakened from a long, harsh journey, their last thoughts were, if I stick my hand out, what will the American government give me? But instead, they pitched in to help build America. They worked long, hard, back-breaking hours at menial jobs to slowly advance their position and status in their newly adopted country. They were adventurous, industrious, and resourceful. They fought in wars to protect their newfound liberty. They educated themselves to our language, customs, and culture, and worked hard to acquire citizenship in this land they came to love. Not only for themselves, or to solidify their position in this society, but most of all to facilitate a better life for their children. These immigrants were proud to be Americans, to the point of extreme, never taking for granted what they considered to be their good fortune, no matter how trivial by most standards. Nor did they ever forget the reasons that had motivated them to leave their distant homes in the first place. They were the true backbone of this country, the builders and the dreamers. I get a little choked up every time I read the first part of this article because I know this to be true. I know that the United States of America was built on the strength of immigration. If it wasn't for immigrants, we'd probably still be living east of the Mississippi, or to be so few of us spread out that the population density of the West would be 1 for every 150 to 200 miles. A large portion of this country, a large portion of the hard work, the sweat, the toil, the knowledge that built this country came over on boats and ships. And they toiled and they worked and they busted their hump to build what was the most powerful and the most economically viable nation this planet had ever seen. This is what built America. Immigration. On a massive scale. Everybody wanted to go to America, the land of opportunity. That's part one. Now let's go to part two, okay? Now let's fast forward to the present and the steady stream of illegal immigrants flooding into this already overburdened country, and run a quick comparison. First off, let me qualify something. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. There's illegal aliens, but if you're an immigrant, look it up in the dictionary. If you're immigrating, every country on this planet has immigration laws. Immigration laws. So even I, simply because it's been used by so many people that it's so recognizable, they immediately understand what you say when you mean it, just like the word sheeple. I don't like the word sheeple. But then when I use the word sheeple, everybody in the liberty movement immediately knows the classification of individuals I'm discussing. So I'm using the term illegal immigration. But they're two mutually exclusive terms. They're oxymorons. There is no such thing as an illegal immigrant. You're either an illegal alien or you're an immigrant. You can't be both. Unless, of course, you got a president that's letting you walk across the border illegally and telling everybody you're an immigrant. It doesn't make him right, but that's where it comes from. I will not try to convince you that they are all bad at heart, because they're not, and that's not true. And some of their expectations and misunderstandings are by intention, by the fault of a government with an agenda. This government! And that's another whole show. We're going to get into why is this happening. And there is a very powerful agenda behind an open border. I saw a video yesterday, and I will make sure it is in the chat link next week when we do the show, showing the border gates on our southern border left wide open. The gate to the fence coming across from Mexico to the United States, and totally unguarded by any border patrol at all. If you think I'm kidding you, I will provide the video, and everybody ought to know by now, I never bullcrap, ever. I don't do it. If I'm telling you something, it's a fact, or I'm telling you I'm not sure. I can provide you with a video showing you the gate to the border on at least one location, and I believe maybe two, left wide open and totally unattended. Okay, so what if some Islamic terrorist wants to walk across the border? Or what if somebody with Ebola wants to walk across the border? Or a very contagious form of tuberculosis wants to walk across the border? Or somebody who's got a couple of kilos of heroin or cocaine wants to walk across the border? It's one thing to say, let's take these children in, although I don't agree with that, and I'll get into that a little bit more next week. But it's another thing to leave the border totally unguarded and wide open so that anybody who wishes to perpetrate harm against the United States of America can do so freely. Let me explain something to you. We've killed over 3 million! That's with a capital M, M-illion people in the Middle East since we went over there in the early 2000s and started popping caps and bombs all over the place, either directly or indirectly. 3 million mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, aunts, uncles. And each and every time we killed, and our government will be the first to admit that well over 90%, some even say over 96% of these were innocent people, collateral damage in the wrong place at the wrong time. I will tell you, each and every one of them that got killed, somebody in that family swore to God they'd find a way to get even. And now you're leaving the border wide open and letting them walk across? I don't agree with us over there killing innocent civilians. But do you think I'm going to be stupid enough to leave the border gate open? There's got to be a reason for that, my friends. But again, I digress. Let's continue on. I've just got done telling you I'm not convinced that all of these are bad people, because they're not. I'll never tell you that. Okay? A lot of these people see this as an opportunity, and that's what they're utilizing it as, an opportunity. But what we have in reality, alongside of them seeing this as an opportunity, is a vast majority of these people who can't speak English. They can't speak English. And this is the biggest issue we have. And they're not so very willing or motivated to learn. And this is keeping them isolated from mainstream society, employment, or serious educational possibility. And choosing to congregate with their own culture rather than to assimilate in the native culture, where the influence of their neighbors could maybe help to smooth over some of these transitional issues, such as the language barrier, such as working, such as education. Instead of these immigrants, I'm using that word, striving to become an integral part of the society that is hosting and indeed supporting them in so many ways, such as welfare, healthcare, housing, and education, a lot of things that many Americans can't even get. Americans who spent their lives working in this country and are natural-born citizens. This government institutes policies that forces the American society to accommodate them and their shortcomings, such as the aforementioned language barrier. These actions ultimately result in the retardation of the need or ambition for learning or working, and facilitates the perpetuation of this burden on you and I. And you have to know the government is very aware of this. If the government makes it very easy for them not to work, and not to go to school, and not to learn English, and gives them free health care, and gives them food stamps. Yes, they're getting food stamps now. I can show you that too. Stop and think about it. What incentive or motivation do they have to do anything? And again, a lot of this isn't even available to a lot of American citizens. Fact. And you all know that's a fact. But it's available to each and every one of them. A large majority are being supported by a government through our tax dollars, intentionally bent on perpetrating this burden on an already overburdened taxpayer to suit an agenda that is not in America's interest. That's part of next week's show. We're going to go into why is the government allowing hundreds of thousands, I'm not exaggerating, of illegals across that border on a regular basis, and then supporting them. There has to be a reason, and there is. But there's also a large number who are outright hostile towards this nation, seeking only what they can get with no investment of labor or ambition, and denigrating their benefactors at every possible chance. These individuals are destructive to society, perpetuating and perpetrating crime and larceny in their newly adopted communities in the form of criminal gangs. One that pops right to the top of my head is MS-13. But let me get through this and then we'll start a little bit on that if we've got a couple of minutes. They also, these gang members also see America as the land of opportunity, but not in the way of past immigrants. It's a totally different type of opportunity. They don't like us Americans for who we are, and they're not shy to say so. But they seem to be very okay with America for what they can get. or take. It's not about bigotry or prejudice, because neither the language you speak nor the color of your skin make any difference in this scenario. This is about the fundamental change we were promised and are getting in spades. Again, we will really flower this bud next week. America is a compassionate society, and we have always welcomed immigrants from across this planet with open arms, but as equals in the applications of the law of this land and in the services and benefits rightly earned. In plain words, I can't say it any plainer than this: what applies to us should damn well apply to you, both legally and socially. And it isn't. But then illegals receive preferential treatment with respect to the law and services without ever having contributed to said benefits or services, over those who have worked hard and contributed to the payment of said services and faithfully obeyed the law. A fundamental trust has been broken, and an anger and resentment rightfully swells in the heartland of America today. There are a lot of people in this country who are angry at what is going on the border. And you would think that a government would wake up to that and say, oh my God, there's a lot of people out there pissed off at us. We better do something. But yet, nothing is happening. Congress still hasn't passed any laws. The president keeps saying, I'm going to take unilateral action. He hasn't done it. And when he does, you can bet your sweet butt it's going to be to say that each and every one of them that cross that border will be allowed to stay here. And we will support them. I look at these two scenarios, past and present, and I wonder where it all went wrong. When America stopped being the land of promise and opportunity, the shining castle on the hill, a place where hard work and social participation led to a life of reward and increasing prosperity, Camelot, and became the welfare capital of the world. We as Americans are literally the most generous culture on this planet. That's a fact. Giving more to charity and donating more time to the less fortunate than any society in this global community, even with our current economic woes. But you can only be used so much, abused so often, and taken for a fool one time too many. And then, well, that chapter hasn't been written yet. But the pen hovers over the parchment, and the story unfolds right before our very eyes. I've just said a mouthful. And I want to go back and qualify what I said with the comment. I am not a prejudiced individual. Anybody who listened to the show last week is probably going to remember what I said, but I'm going to repeat it again for all to hear. My wife's maiden name is Maria Juana Barrios de Sanchez Garcia. That is a fact. My wife is Hispanic. My children are Hispanic. My grandchildren are Hispanic. This is not about prejudice. This is about protecting this country. This is about putting a burden on this nation we are ill-equipped to handle at this point in time. This is about treating immigration as every other nation on this planet does. Legally. The border is literally wide open. We have made enemies across this planet. Fierce enemies. Enemies who have sworn on their dying breath to hurt America. And yet, I will show you a movie next week whereby the border stands totally open and totally unguarded. Now, these Border Patrol agents don't just walk away from their post. They are ordered away. Otherwise, not wanting to get fired, they would be at that gate. You know they would. So somebody with some authority somewhere told them, you will leave that gate unguarded and open. Because, again, I don't want to lose my job. If you tell me to walk away from this gate, I'm going to close it and lock it. But it's not. It's open and it's unguarded. And what's coming through? I alluded to a gang called MS-13. MS-13 is one of the most notorious gangs south of the border. They are known for having no mercy. They are known for killing their rivals. They are known for killing members of their own gang who get to the point where they're no longer needed or pleased with. Now, border patrols have stopped these individuals from coming across the border. And then they were told, yes, this is a fact. You can find that in information provided in articles of illegal immigration or illegal aliens on the Liberty Beacon and on the Falling Darkness. They were told that MS-13 members were not to be, they were not to be held up because they were MS-13 members. Okay? Did you hear what I just said? And how do you know they're MS-13 members? How do you know? Well, they display big tattoos on their face, on their back, on their arms that say MS-13. Now, when I put the article out in a couple of forums on Facebook, I had a couple of people jump all over me saying, so what? I can have a tattoo of whatever put on. That doesn't mean I'm part of that or that I'm part of that organization. Let me explain something to you. Or let me explain it to you. Okay? If you are not a member of MS-13 and you have an MS-13 tattoo, you're a dead man or woman. They will kill you on the spot. You do not wear an MS-13 tattoo unless you are a member of MS-13. And that goes with any gang in Los Angeles or San Francisco or New York City. If you wear that tattoo, you darn right well better be a member of that gang or you have forfeit your life. But these Border Patrol agents have been told that they cannot discriminate against individuals wearing MS-13 tattoos. If the individual says, I'm not a member of MS-13, regardless of whether they have the tattoos or not, they have to be allowed into the United States illegally with MS-13 tattoos. And the first place they head for is the closest chapter of the MS-13 group, and, well, you can pretty much guess the rest. So our government is telling a government agency, you will allow these gang members in. Don't know they're gang members. If they tell you they're not MS-13, they must not be. Well, if they've got an MS-13 tattoo and they're still alive, I can guarantee you, they are MS-13 members. Or they wouldn't be walking across that border. They'd be dead. All right, that's about all we have for, time for today. I don't know if my co-host is here. Paula, I don't know if you're here. But if you are, would you like to talk about... Would you like... Well, I know you've got a party going on, and I feel guilty about keeping you from it.
And some fans on the computer. Yeah, we're going out on several stations. We are also partners with the community press group. We just can't speak. Shazizradio.com, 1800weebly.co.uk, Turtle Island News, These Changing Times Radio, and also Awake Radio US and awakeradio.co.uk.
And also awakeradio.tv.
Yeah.
That's
on Awake Radio US. We have been doing some amazing things. Stick around. We're just growing so fast.
You're busting out.
I know I left somebody out. I always leave somebody out when I I
Well, we'll get them next week. But I've got to tell
absolutely.
you, the Liberty Beacon Project is very, very proud to be part of the Awake family. And we're very, very proud to be allowed to put our message out and on all of the different venues and all of the different podcast shows that represent this project. And Paula, thank you so much. Awake Radio, thank you so much. And everybody that's listened to us or to the old man rant every single week with patience and taken anything away from it, we appreciate each and every one of you. Next week, we take this one step further. We talk about what's in the shadows and we talk about the real reason the borders are open. Thanks again. Have a great, great night and a great Sunday.